Now, a WYFF News 4 special.
Mother Nature's unbelievable.
A deadly and dramatic finish in Florida to last year's hurricane season.
And I've seen a lot, but I ain't never seen nothing like this.
My mom was supposed to retire here and spend the rest of her life and be happy, and now we have nothing.
How will that impact how we prepare for storms this season in the Carolinas and Georgia?
We were on the dirty side of this particular hurricane. We took a punch. It looked pretty rough.
Our weather team is tracking it all.
Just because it's a Category 1, it can cause a lot of damage.
To keep you informed and safe. Tonight, WYFF News 4, forecasting our future, Hurricane Outlook.
Good evening. I'm WYFF News 4 Chief Meteorologist Chris Justice. Thank you for joining us for our hurricane season special. Hurricane season starts on June 1st, and tonight the WYFF 4 weather team will join me to help you get ready for any severe weather that may come our way in the next 6 months. We'll look back at some of the most serious storms to impact us and look ahead to how the Western Carolinas prepare to host coastal evacuees. We'll even take you inside how hurricane hunters gather data. And tonight, as part of our ongoing commitment to forecasting our future, I'm going to dig deeper and not only show you the forecast, but give you perspective, like how this hurricane season stacks up against normal years. Plus, look at how closely tropical storms, hurricanes, and even major hurricanes are tied to our area, how often they return. My goal, as with any severe weather, is to give you all the information you need to keep your family safe. Now, the Carolinas and Georgia are no strangers to hurricanes, especially in recent years. We had back-to-back record-breaking years of activity in 2020 and 2021. So last year was a bit different. In the midst of a slow season, 2022 was known for one major storm, Hurricane Ian. It was a monster in the Gulf of Mexico, reaching up to Category 5 in strength. And for a time, it was threatening Tampa Bay. The storm hooked right, slamming into the Fort Myers area of Florida with winds up to 150 miles per hour and storm surge values at 13 feet. Now, the storm weakened as it moved north, eventually getting back out into the Atlantic, where it made a second landfall here in South Carolina. The storm brought significant beach erosion to the Carolina coast and flooding rains. All said, Ian tracked across a large part of the United States and unfortunately taken the lives of over 150 people across the United States as a whole. And though it's the wind that often grabs your attention in a hurricane, it was the water and the flooding that caused most of the deaths related to Ian. That's why the track and the forecast details are so important. And most of that weather data that helps us make a forecast comes from the air. In fact, some even make a career out of flying into hurricanes. Perella Lewis introduces us to the hurricane hunters.
They fly over, around, and into the storm.
What we do is fly through the initial building of storms at Louisville Invest. We upgrade it to a fixed mission, and then we're actually penetrating the eye of, up to a Category 5 hurricane.
These hurricane hunters typically fly a C-130 that's specially equipped just for them.
Ours is specifically designed with an enhanced radar and external tanks. It allows us to fly a little bit longer in those storms.
The average flight time is about 6 hours, but some can last up to 12. And when hurricanes are close to making landfall, it's all hands on deck around the clock.
The bare minimum crew is going to be 2 pilots, a navigator, a weather officer, and the loadmaster.
A loadmaster for these dropsondes. Much like a weather balloon, they're equipped with sensor gathering data.
We're basically going to be collecting wind speeds, wind direction, pressure, and also surface temperatures. So the only difference is obviously weather balloon going up, a dropsonde is basically free falling to the surface.
And each mission requires more than just 1 or 2.
At any given mission, we go through quite a few. We're dropping them on crosswind legs, inside the eye, penetrating the eye wall. We're getting data from basically all around the storm.
So within minutes of you dropping a dropsonde, is it safe to say we're getting that information?
Absolutely.
Believe it or not, hurricane hunters got their start back in 1943 in a bar room much like this one on a dare.
A pilot flew through it and was dared to do so and survived, and I believe on the next couple flights they took a weather officer as well.
And ever since then, data from the tropics has taken flight and continues to lead the way with instant information that continues to save lives.
Everybody just wants to keep everyone safe, so that's our primary mission, and so it's really important that we just listen to those local authorities and evacuate when directed.
Due to advancing technology, the dropsondes we showed you are actually being phased out this summer. They're being replaced with smaller versions with increased technology and capabilities.
Thanks, Perilla. No matter the hurricane category, any kind of hurricane can leave lasting impacts on a community. Meteorologist Griffin Hardy joins us to break down just what each category can bring.
All right, so the scale we use to measure the strength of a hurricane is called the Saffir-Simpson scale. It's a 1 to 5 scale that's based on the strongest winds at any given time in a hurricane. Any tropical system with winds from 74 to 95 miles per hour is considered a Category 1 hurricane. And typically a Category 1 will only produce minor damage, snapping a few trees and causing some power outages. Moving up to Category 2, winds range from 96 to 110 miles per hour. Roof and siding damage becomes possible. Shallow trees will fall over and significant power outages become likely. Moving up the scale to Category 3, we're now in major hurricane territory. Winds range from 111 to 129 miles per hour. This causes major damage to homes from both wind and storm surge immediately along the coast. Power and water may be out for a few days to even up to a week at times. Damage starts to look catastrophic when you get up to Category 4. Winds range from 130 to 156 miles per hour. Most trees are knocked down. Storm surge can cover the first floor of homes. Power and water may be out for weeks at a time. Finally, Category 5, winds in excess of 157 miles per hour. Those storms exceptionally rare but cause unbelievable damage. Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Griffin. Wow, so visual there. Still to come in our Forecasting Our Future hurricane outlook. While we're hundreds of miles from the coast, the Western Carolinas have seen major impacts from tropical systems. We'll take a look back at some of the most severe and look at ways you can stay safe and prepare. Welcome back. Hurricanes and tropical systems can bring lasting impacts to the Western Carolinas. Meteorologist Sydney Sullivan takes a look back at some of the worst we've ever experienced.
Tropical systems are often remembered for their strength, the cost of damage, and the lives lost. Each storm leaves its mark, sometimes resulting in lives completely turned upside down and communities changed forever.
We are further inland from the coast, but we still get these really big impacts from tropical systems, and it only takes one.
From the coast all the way to the mountains, tropical systems have battered the Carolinas.
Flooding's number one, of course, especially with slow-moving systems. They tend to bring a lot of rain in a short time period. And we also get the threat for, pretty quick and brief, spin-up tornadoes.
While we're usually looking at systems coming up from the Gulf, landfall along the Carolina coast cannot be forgotten. And for many, Hurricane Hugo will forever be the storm that changed the Carolinas forever. Making landfall along the South Carolina coast in September of 1989, maintaining hurricane strength with its approach towards the upstate, Hugo remains one of the costliest and strongest storms to ever hit South Carolina. Then in 2018, many of the same communities that were underwater during Hurricane Matthew 2 years prior were inundated again when Hurricane Florence arrived. Remembered for its historic flooding, it is estimated that over 74,000 structures were flooded and over 5,000 people had to be rescued due to flooding. More recently, the remnants of Tropical Storm Fred will be remembered as a storm in 2021 that took the lives of 6 people in western North Carolina due to the devastating flooding.
The mountains themselves can actually provide what we call upslope flow. And so in this upslope flow, it can actually bring, kind of additional showers that are kind of ongoing. And basically it's just another mechanism for a lift is what we like to call it. And it brings that extra rainfall and kind of longer duration of it along the mountains and can cause substantial flash flooding.
In addition to the deadly flooding, severe weather rattled the upstate, with a record 37 tornado warnings issued, with several tornadoes touching down.
So if you have the right front quadrant, of course, that's where you get your fastest forward motion within the system. That's where you usually get the favorable conditions for tornadoes.
Whether it be flooding or severe weather, from June to November, the effects of hurricane season can be felt near and far, shaping communities forever. Even though landfall may be hundreds of miles away from us, the Western Carolinas have certainly seen some notable storms that have left lasting impressions across the region.
Thank you, Sydney. We'll certainly never forget those. Now, as part of our commitment to forecasting our future, we want to always dig deeper and provide perspective. And with hurricanes, perspective can save lives. Now, looking back at hurricane data, it's actually possible to estimate how often tropical systems will make a return to certain parts of the coastline. I find this fascinating because it gives a real look at just how vulnerable areas are. For example, when you look specifically at Category 1 or Category 2 hurricanes, the coastline in South Carolina will see a return period, or every 8 to 10 years get struck by one of those Category 1s or 2s. If you look back at history, it's happened a little bit more often than that. Ian in 2022 and Matthew in 2018. So we've had some hurricanes strike us in recent years, and it's certainly a bit above average in recent years. But when you look specifically at the major hurricanes, this would be Cat 3, 4s, and 5s with winds at 111 miles per hour or greater, we see a return period anywhere from 23 years in Myrtle Beach to about 34 years down toward Charleston or Hilton Head. Now, when you look back at the data, it's been 34 years since we've had a major hurricane, and that would be Hugo. That's not to say we're going to get struck by one in the next year or so, but statistically speaking, we are well overdue from a major hurricane making landfall in South Carolina, because this data shows us it happens nearly every 30 years. You go back from Hugo to Gracie, that was a solid 30 years. Then, of course, Hazel was just a few years prior to Gracie, so it can certainly happen more often. Now, with data like this, you know it's not if we'll be impacted again, but when. Let's check in once more with meteorologist Sydney Sullivan on ways you can prepare should a hurricane impact our area.
When it comes to hurricane season, it is important to be prepared for whatever comes our way. Have emergency supplies and a plan laid out before the storm hits. Experts also recommend getting a weather radio and know the evacuation routes if you're traveling along the coast. You should also build an emergency kit with things like non-perishable foods, bottled water, a flashlight, and any medical needs like a first aid kit or prescriptions. For more information about how to get ready and stay safe, head to WYFF4.com. We have links to the Red Cross and South Carolina's Department of Emergency Management, both dedicated to keeping you safe in a storm. And always stay up to date with the WYFF4 weather team for specifics on keeping you and your family safe. In Greenville, meteorologist Sydney Sullivan, WYFF News 4.
Thank you, Sydney. Straight ahead, how Greenville prepares to host people from the coast in case of evacuation orders. With technology that we have our hands on, we have a good idea of where tropical storms are heading a few days ahead of time, as long as 12 to 14 days if it's way out here in the Atlantic, to 4 to 6 days if it's closer to home. Now, those time frames can help people in the path of those storms have a chance to evacuate before it arrives. Meteorologist Griffin Hardy explores how Greenville County and the state of South Carolina plan ahead for accommodating those evacuees from the coast to our area.
Here we have an unusual sight, traffic going one way on both sides of the highway. What may seem odd elsewhere has become a common sight in South Carolina during hurricane season on Interstate 26 from Charleston to Columbia. This is what happens when residents along the coast evacuate inland before an incoming hurricane. But keeping this effort organized is no easy task.
The first time we actually implemented was 2016. When Hurricane Matthew was threatening the South Carolina coast and ended up coming ashore. We did it again in 2018 when Hurricane Florence was threatening South Carolina. And then we did it one last time. Last time we've done it was in 2019 when Hurricane Dorian was really doing a lot of damage to the Bahamas, and then ultimately did come ashore.
Justin Powell of the South Carolina Department of Transportation says they perform regular drills every year, simulating a lane reversal on I-26 during a hurricane evacuation.
So everybody knows what they need to do with our partners at the Highway Patrol and the DOT staff, all know what they need to do to successfully execute a lane reversal on I-26 if needed.
If evacuees need to or want to go farther inland past Columbia, Charlotte, Spartanburg, or Greenville are their likely stops. In the event that Greenville sees a surplus of hurricane evacuees, Greenville County Emergency Management says it often works with other local agencies in providing them storm shelters.
We work very closely with the city of Greenville, especially during these types of events. And so the shelters that are in the county and in the city that are hurricane shelters, they're actually in the state's hurricane plan. So those are already pre-designated. We know how many occupants can be in those shelters.
Stumpf explained how our storm shelters in Greenville County are typically the last ones in the state to open if the need arises due to our distance from the coast. That's not to say, however, that we're not prone to the effects from the remnants of hurricanes or tropical storms as they come inland.
Back in 2017, Hurricane Nate made landfall in Louisiana and actually spun up a tornado in the Lake Lanier community of Greenville County. So we deal with those tornadoes so far away, made landfall in Louisiana, but we're still dealing with the impacts here in the upstate of South Carolina.
And all this, as we get into hurricane season, is a great reminder to always have a hurricane or severe weather emergency plan. Chris, back to you.
Thanks, Griffin. Each year, certain hurricanes stand out in our memories. Meteorologist Dale Gilbert joins us with a look at the history and how and why we name hurricanes.
Have you ever wondered why hurricanes have names? Well, we know that each year as the oceans warm with the summer heat, the moist ocean air from the increased evaporation is the fuel for storms that develop. The National Hurricane Center has produced a list of names years in advance so we can track these storms throughout the season. And that season is June 1st to November 30th. Now, they can and have come earlier than those dates, but typically most develop during that seasonal range. The big reason is names are easier to track and remember than longitude and latitude stats on a big map with dates beside it. The list will alternate between male and female names and contain 21 names to start. Now, should any of those names reach major storm status with catastrophic loss, then that name is retired from use, and it's part of news history. For example, Hugo, Katrina, Andrew, and many others have been retired from ever being on that list again. Names begin when tropical cyclones reach sustained winds around a big low of 39 miles per hour. Now, how active hurricane seasons become can vary with many factors worldwide. This year's list begins with Arlene and ends with the name of Whitney. So these are the 21 names for this year. Believe it or not, there have been years when we didn't have names, and Perella Lewis has more on that history.
Hey, that's great information. Thank you so much, Dale. Let's talk a little bit about the hurricane name history. Believe it or not, we didn't start naming hurricanes until 1949. The first official hurricane name was Hurricane Bess. That was named after First Lady Bess Truman, believe it or not. Prior to that, hurricanes were tracked by years, like the Great Hurricane of 1935, for instance. Up until then, up until 1950, we used names like Abel, Baker, and Charlie. And then in 1953, only female names were used. It wasn't until the late 1970s that both male and female names were incorporated into the rotation. Currently, the list of names is on a 6-year rotation, with some being retired because some are very costly or even deadly, like Hurricane Hugo and Hurricane Katrina. Those names will never be used again, just a couple of instances there. And then only twice in history we've had to use the Greek alphabet because the storms exceeded the list of names. We get 21 names every year, by the way. The National Weather Service said no more. They did away with the Greek alphabet, and now we use a supplemental list of names if we run out of storm names, like possibly this year.
Thank you, Perella and Dale. Straight ahead, our 2023 Hurricane Outlook. Welcome back. Now, as we look at the data, one storm has already formed this year before hurricane season even came close. Back in January, the National Hurricane Center says, yep, there was a low pressure in the Atlantic that had tropical characteristics. So we've already got one in the can here. It didn't grow to tropical storm or Category 1 strength. And when you look at that data, on average, we get our first hurricane in early to mid-August. Last year, Tropical Storm Alex formed on June 5th, and right on cue, Category 1 Danielle formed on September 1st. Now, we look at the heat energy, and this time of the year, it's usually the Caribbean that those fronts kind of scale in through here, and you get some development in here, and they can ride toward the north. Those fronts become weaker and weaker the more we get into hurricane season, which is why in June we'll get a lot of this activity to form, if there is some, and it moves toward the north. Usually these are weaker early on. By July, we start to look deeper out into the Atlantic, and then by August, we are starting to see warmer waters out here, so stronger systems and deeper out into the Atlantic. As you can see, activity by month, we really start to see it jump up between August and September, accounting for more than half of our named systems. Of course, you can get them in June or July, but it is a lot more rare. Now, this season, we have the El Nino factor, which means there is a strong upper level jet stream, which is one thing on our side when it comes to hurricanes. The strong winds aloft basically tear these hurricanes apart. Hurricanes are kind of weak when it comes to any kind of vulnerability. They don't like twisting and turning winds. When I look closer at the data here, the last El Nino year that we've had, you have to go all the way back to 2014. We only had 8 storms form that year. It was very active from then on out. 2015 through 2022, you remember all those threats we had, evacuations along the Carolina coast, and in fact, La Nina years were very strong. That would be the opposite of what we're in this year. That was 2017 through 2022 with record-breaking seasons those years. Now, the bottom line here, quiet years can still be bad. All it takes is one storm to form and make landfall. Hurricane Andrew is a perfect example of that in Florida. But a strong El Nino does help. It means fewer and weaker storms are expected. So the 2023 hurricane outlook looks like this, pretty much on par with El Nino helping us out. We expect 14 named storms, around 6 hurricanes, and around 2 major hurricanes. And you have to know we've already had a system that has formed in the Atlantic basin there. Now, as a reminder, the weather team is always tracking our forecast on WYFF4 mobile app. You can download it right now for free to keep tabs on hurricane season and any kind of severe weather 24/7. Now, I want to thank you for joining our team tonight for our Forecasting Our Future Hurricane Outlook. Know that our team will update you anytime severe weather is possible as storms develop and as they move through the area. We hope you have a great night.